Welcome. We're going to start by lying down on our backs. So get comfortable. If you like to put a blanket underneath your head, you're more than welcome to. And we'll have our knees bent with your feet on the floor. And rest your hands, one on your belly and the other a little bit higher up, more towards your ribs. And take a moment to close your eyes, or if you prefer, you could always take your gaze to a spot on the ceiling. And start to notice your contact points to the floor, beginning with the back of your head. Then notice if the back of your neck is touching the blanket or if there's a space between the back of your neck and the floor. And take a slow breath in, letting your belly, your ribs expand. And as you exhale, send your awareness to your upper back, and specifically your right shoulder blade, which is a triangular bone just to the side of your spine. And notice the connection between your right shoulder blade and the floor. And then send your awareness across your upper back over to the left side. And notice what areas of the back of your left shoulder blade are connected to the floor. And one might feel a little heavier or lighter, and that's totally normal. And then notice your spine in the center. So your upper back spine, middle back spine, lower back spine. You might feel your lower back spine on the floor, or there might be a little bit of space between your low back spine and the ground. And then finally, sensing your sacrum, your tailbone, your two pelvic halves, the soles of your feet, your arms, and your hands. So go back to this sense of your hands on the front of your body. And as you breathe in, let your belly relax so that it expands up into your hand. Keep that expansion going into your ribs, and then let it migrate all the way up into your chest, followed by an exhale. We're going to go for 2 more rounds of a slow breath in, starting in the belly, moving up into your ribs. Your ribs expand front to back, side to side, and then you exhale. And then shift your hands to the sides of your rib cage. You'll still expand your belly on the inhale, but this time notice the expansion in the sides of your ribs into your hands. And then exhale, reconnect your awareness to your shoulder blades and how they rest on the floor. One more time, slow breath in, belly swells, your ribs expand circumferentially, so front to back, side to side, and on exhale, just sensing the connection of your head, your shoulder blades, your spine, and your pelvis. And then go ahead and grab your yoga block. You're going to want to have a block and a blanket nearby. I call this the hug roll. So you'll take the block, and I like it this way, but you could do this way, really any orientation that works for you. We're going to use it as an icon for your breastbone. So once you give yourself a hug, and you can grab your upper arms or your shoulders, wherever you feel like the block stays connected to the front of your chest, your breastbone. And then have your feet wide on the ground. And as you inhale, roll your head and your chest to the right, but keep your left buttock on the ground. And then come back through center and roll your head, your rib cage, your chest to the left. And then coming back through center. So it's an inhale as you expand your front, back, and side ribs, rolling to the right. Your right ear will get a little closer to the floor, and then come back through center and roll onto your left shoulder blade. Your left ear gets a little closer to the floor. but your right buttock stays grounded. Let's go for a couple more times, because you might notice as you go, it gets a little easier, or maybe you feel like you have a bit more range of motion. But no need to force. It's not like a competition to see how far you can go. Just breathing in as you rotate your cervical spine, your thoracic spine. Breathing out as you come through center. One more time, each side. So as you roll your head and chest to the left, your right side of the pelvis, right foot stays grounded. And then as you rotate, as you roll your head and chest to the right, you still stay grounded through the left side of your pelvis. And then coming back to center. So we're going to roll onto our left side. And I like to use blanket underneath my head, so you're more than welcome to as well. And then the block is really nice to have for in between your knees, your thighs. Once you have your prop set up, you'll come to lie on your side with the block between your knees. The blanket is nice to have underneath your head. You can build it up as high or as low as you like. And then connect your palms together with your arms straight out in line with your shoulders. And for a moment, just relax. So let your entire left side body start to melt into the ground. And feel the connection of your left ear to the blanket, left shoulder and left side waist, your left outer hip and leg and foot. Let the whole left side of your body soften into the ground. And then one more thing I forgot to mention is make sure that your blanket is a little bit further forward, because we're going to be rolling our face and chest towards the ground, and you'll want to have some cushion underneath your face. So we'll start by reaching your right hand past your left hand. That's gonna roll your face and your chest towards the floor. So yeah, your face is gonna get a little smushed. That's why it's nice to have a blanket. And then reversing the movement. So now my right hand is sliding past my left hand onto my left inner forearm. Oh, feels so nice. And that starts to roll my face and chest towards the ceiling. So we're gonna continue with that. And again, I'm gonna remind you, there's no contest as to how far you're trying to reach. It is more about feeling. Feeling the movement of your hand and your arm, but how that creates what's called some follow through into your head, your chest, your ribs, your spine. Now, the reason why we've got a block here between our legs is we're actually implementing what's called a constraint. So the constraint of the block is just there to remind you that we're not moving the legs, the pelvis, your feet or your ankles. This is all happening mostly from the belly button up. And as you continue, notice how you can implement different strategies. So one strategy might be breath-based, where you focus your inhale on the reach and your exhale to return. But a completely different strategy might be to not really, prioritize the breath, just breathe naturally and feel what you can do with leverage. So maybe how can you push certain areas of your body into the floor to create more movement in the parts of your body that aren't contacting the floor. So for example, here, I'm pushing a little into the ground with the back of my left hand and arm, and that creates a little more movement through my right arm, my spine, and my rib cage. This is your last time. So enjoy, go for a really nice face smush, and you can always pause somewhere along the way and take an extra breath or just notice. This doesn't have to be a continuous movement. And then we're going to meet back with our palms connected and explore the same movement, but at a different angle. So you're going to angle your arms down at a low diagonal. So if you think of a clock and maybe, there's 12, this is 3, we're aiming the arms down, same like maybe 5-ish, 4 or 5-ish. And otherwise it's the same. So you'll start to slide your top hand, which is your right hand, past the bottom fingertips. Feel the floor. Notice how your face is going to smush into the blanket. That's going to roll your chest towards the ground. And then you reverse the movement. So you're still tracing your right hand along the inside of your left forearm. But what you might notice as you continue is just by changing the angle of our arms, it changes your experience of the movement. If you're kind of an anatomy nerd like me, you might be thinking like, oh, interesting, when we were in the first position, it was very clear protraction, retraction of the scapulas. You might notice that now that we're at this downward angle of the arms, that your shoulder blades are in what's called downward rotation. Let's do just a couple more here. And maybe now notice the contact points of your head to the blanket. So where do you feel the most pressure? From your head to the blanket as you reach and roll. Noticing the shift of weight from your nose to your temple, to your ear, to behind the ear, maybe all the way towards the back of your head. Last time in this position, another fun thing to explore or notice is what's happening in your lower body, right? It's mostly still, rather than focusing your awareness on the parts of your body that are moving. And then the next time you reconnect your hands together, we're going to do one more angle before we switch to the other side. So here it gets a little tricky. You might have to move your blanket so that you can have your arms at this upward diagonal but still have the cushion for your face. So that might take a little bit of, finagling. Once you've set that up, your arms will be, say 1, 2 o'clock if you go back to that clock imagery. And then the movement is, again, the same. So you're going to roll and reach. This one's my favorite. And feel the floor past your fingertips, or maybe not. Depending on how your body's feeling today, you might not feel the floor. You might just feel a little past your bottom fingertips, but not actually touch the ground. And then as you roll backwards, the same thing, noticing rotation through your cervical spine, your thoracic spine, but I think why this one's my favorite is the rotation of the upper thoracic spine. I tend to get a little bit tight in that area. You'll also probably notice how your right arm, my bicep, is almost touching my chin, and that's okay. Let's go for 2 or 3 more rounds. Inhale, feel your belly and ribs expand. And as you exhale and reverse the movement, I didn't mention anything about your eyes, so you could do this with eyes open or closed. I think it's really fun to observe how when your eyes are closed, you might have more access to your internal state, to interoception, or what's happening inside of your body, your breath's pace, your heart's pace. If your eyes are open, you might observe, I do, how your eyes lead your spine. So it's always easier to get more movement of your spine if you let your eyes lead the way. So as you roll and reach, if you take your eyes at this upward diagonal towards your right fingertips, notice maybe you can reach a little further. And same thing, if you turn your head and your eyes, so you're looking behind you out of the back corner of your right eye, you might notice you can roll backwards a little bit farther. And of course, knowing that that's not the goal, but it's just something to observe. All right, so take a moment and just, again, let your whole left side body sink into the ground. And then take your right hand to the right side of your rib cage. And as you inhale, send your awareness into your right hand and the right side of your ribs, trying to expand as if you were like a fish and this was your fish gills. They open up towards the sky, and then you exhale, letting your left side waist drop into the floor. We'll do that one more time. Inhaling, your right side rib cage expands up towards the ceiling. You can feel that with your hand, your fingers. And then at the apex of the inhale, you let it go and you exhale, feeling your ribs drop downwards towards the ground. Okay, so let's do a little halfway check, because I think it's always interesting to notice the difference from side to side before we do the other side and notice the difference of everything. So take a quick moment, come back onto your back. Once you're on your back with your knees bent, you can rest one hand on your belly, one hand on your ribs, and take a moment to send your awareness back to your shoulder blades. And notice the connection of your right shoulder blade to the ground. Notice the connection of your left shoulder blade to the ground. And you might notice that one shoulder blade feels a little heavier than the other, or maybe you notice one shoulder blade feels a little lighter than the other. For me, my right shoulder blade feels quite a bit more grounded on the floor. Let's check one more thing. So take your block and come back to hugging yourself, where your block is like an icon for your breastbone, your sternum. And then roll your head and chest to the right, keeping your left buttock on the ground. And then come back through center and roll your head and chest to the left. Do that one or two more times, observing how it feels now versus how it felt before. So for me, I feel like I have more rotation to the right than to the left. And definitely it feels like I have a bit more rotation to the right than I had before. You might have an entirely different experience. Maybe it feels like you can rotate more your head and chest to each side, and it's easier to keep your buttocks grounded. Or maybe there's no change at all. So let your experience be your own. Rotate one more time to the right, and then bring yourself back to center. Okay, so we're going to repeat all that on the other side. So you can just roll over. I'm going to shift so that I'm facing the camera. I'm going to reset and lie on my right side. So you can just roll over. I'm going to set up with my blankets on the other side of the mat, just so I can see you and you can see me. Then you'll take the block and again, put it between your thighs, your knees. And actually this is a thinner block. So if you have a thicker block and it doesn't feel comfortable, you could always just put another blanket or pillow between your knees. Or some people prefer nothing at all. Then you'll have your arms once again just straight out in line with your shoulders, resting your head on the blanket. And then take a breath in and start to roll and reach. And your face again is either going to get smushed into the blanket, or you'll have enough support that your face doesn't fall completely off the blanket. And then reversing the movement. So starting to roll your head and chest towards the ceiling and feeling your left hand slide up the inside of your right forearm. So let's do that a few more times. And play around with what it feels like when your eyes are closed versus what it feels like when your eyes are open. So with the eyes closed, might be easier to focus on what's happening internally, or you might have a better sense of your contact points to the floor, the weight shifting along the side of your body, your hip, your shoulder, your arm, and your back. And then when you explore the eyes open, notice how that changes the experience. One of my favorite things to play with is when you reach the top hand, if you look up just a little bit, you might be able to reach a bit further. And as you reverse the movement, if you turn your head to the left and try to look behind you to the floor, you might increase your range of motion in the movement. One more time. Inhale, roll and reach, and then exhale, come back to palms connected. Okay, so you're going to angle your arms and hands down at that lower diagonal, and we'll repeat. See where you are as far as having support underneath your face. And just noticing how as you change the diagonal, how does it change your rolling pattern? Try this next time reaching with an inhalation, breathing into your back ribs, your side ribs, and the reverse of the movement is your exhale. Let's go 2 more times at this diagonal, and then we'll move to the last diagonal. Breathing in as you roll head and chest towards the floor. You might notice that the rotation is happening lower down your spine. And last one. Slow breath in and a long breath out. Okay, so as we transition to the upper diagonal, you'll probably have to move your blanket a little bit so you have room for your arms. And then starting your reach. And let's do eyes open here. So look at your fingertips and then look beyond your fingertips to the floor, maybe to the wall that's opposite where your fingertips are reaching. And then reversing. Tracking your eyes across the ceiling to the wall that's behind you. And when these sequences are taught in a Feldenkrais class, I am not a certified Feldenkrais teacher. I've just taken Feldenkrais awareness through movement classes weekly for the last, 3 or 4 years. The teacher doesn't demonstrate. They just use their words. So there's no need to watch me. You can do all this by listening to my voice, but sometimes it is nice to have a visual reference. On these last 2 times, I'm going to, on purpose, keep the movement smaller, just because there's always interesting things to notice in the smaller ranges of movement. Finish up the one that you're on. And then reconnect your palms together. You can lower your arms a bit, and we'll come back onto our back and recheck. So again, you can have the blankets or not. I'm gonna have my head on the floor because that's how I was at the very beginning when I did the first check-in. So bringing one hand to your belly and one hand to your ribs. As you inhale, let your belly and your ribs expand. And then notice your exhale. And let's go for 2 more rounds of this 2-part inhalation. So starting in the belly, you feel the expansion underneath your bottom hand. And then letting that breath wave up into your rib basket, you'll feel expansion with your top hand. On the exhale, let your spine relax into the ground. Let your shoulder blades relax into the ground. Continue just 1 or 2 more times with that breath pattern, but notice if it's easier to get some expansion in your belly and ribs when you inhale. And observe on your exhalation if it's a little bit easier to relax your back body into the ground. And then bifurcate your awareness. So send your awareness to your right shoulder blade. You can do any little wiggling that you want to sense the connection of your right shoulder blade to the ground, the right side of your upper back. And then transition your awareness over to your left shoulder blade. And notice the connection of your left shoulder blade to the ground. And if there's any change from the beginning of the practice, the sequence. And then let's finally do one last thing. We're going to check back in with the hug roll. So grab your block. So the reason for the block is sometimes when I teach this in my classes, I have a lot of people just moving their arms side to side, and the idea is to rotate your thoracic spine and move your rib cage. So by implementing what's called a constraint, so here's your constraint, you're holding the block and the block stays connected to your chest, you're kind of forced into not moving your arms and just rotating or rolling your head and chest side to side. So go back into that slow breath pattern where you inhale as you roll and you exhale back to center. And you'll keep your knees pointing to the sky, keep both sides of your pelvis connected to the ground. So when you roll your head and chest to the left, your right side of your pelvis stays on the ground. Might get a little lighter, but it's still connected. And when you roll your head and chest to the right, the left side of your pelvis remains connected to the ground. And then do 1 more on each side and notice if there's any change. Is it easier to roll? Or maybe it's just more relaxing. Perhaps you can feel more connection through the shoulder blade that you're rolling towards the floor than you were able to before, or that there's more lift of the opposite shoulder blade away from the ground. And then coming back to center, you can take the block away and just pause for a moment. Go ahead and roll onto your right side and press yourself up to seated. This next sequence will start in standing with revolved triangle pose. That'll be our check-in. And then we'll come back down to the ground. But just so you know, I like to have a couple blocks when I do revolved triangle pose. So if you want to grab your blocks, you can do that. So I'm going to start with my left foot forward, right foot back, and come into a hip hinge and start to rotate as I reach my right hand for the blocks. And you're welcome to just leave your hand on your lower back, maybe even bring your hand to your chest to get the rotation, or if you like, you can reach your left arm up towards the ceiling. And it's just kind of a momentary snapshot. So you see what the left side feels like, and now I'm going to check in and see what's going on with my right side. So I'll have right foot forward, left foot back, and same thing, come into a hip hinge, start to rotate, place my hand on the block. My other hand is here at my sacrum, This is just the way I like to do it. You're welcome to do your triangle pose how you like to do it. And then once you feel grounded through your feet, you could stay here, or maybe take your hand to your chest, or reach your arm up towards the ceiling. And just notice sensation, especially in the upper back and the middle back as far as this rotation goes. Hard not to notice. Okay, this is gonna take us back down to the ground. We'll be lying on our side. So I'm gonna start on my right side. And you don't really need blocks for this side lying sequence, but you can use them. You could have one in between your knees. Okay, so make yourself comfortable with your arms. This is really about the lower body. In the previous sequence, we were doing a lot of rotation, leading with hands, and now it's your knees. So it's like you're sitting in a chair. And we're gonna start by taking the left knee a little bit forward of the right knee, and then back to where you started. And you can watch, it's kind of fun, or at least I think it's kind of fun. And what you might notice is that each time you reach your left knee forward, your pelvis rotates. Let's go 2 more times, just left knee forward, and then back to where you started. And again, left knee forward and back to where you started. And then we'll do the opposite. You're gonna take your left knee back behind the right knee and then to where you started. So when we walk, gait pattern, that's what it's referred to, our pelvis rotates. And this is one of my favorite sequences to do with students, clients who are maybe a little bit stiff through the pelvis, so when they walk, they don't have arm swing, or their pelvis doesn't rotate a whole lot. Let's do 2 more times, very small movement. Your left knee slides back. That's gonna take the left side of your pelvis backwards. And 1 more time. Okay, now we're gonna do both. So you'll take your top knee forward and slide it back. And after watching it for a while, take a break and connect your palms together. You can even close your eyes. And notice how we're doing the opposite of what we did earlier. We were keeping our knees and our pelvis still and moving our head and our rib cage. And now your head, your rib cage, your shoulders aren't moving, and you're rotating your pelvis. 1 more time, take your left knee past your right knee, and then reverse it, take your left knee behind your right knee, and then reconnect in neutral. Okay, so now you'll have your hands together, arms in line with your shoulder, and roll and reach your left hand past your right hand, and then reconnect your hands together. We'll do that 2 more times. So your lower body stays still, you reach your top hand past your bottom hand, and then return. 1 more time. Rolling your head and chest towards the floor, and then reconnecting your palms. Then we'll do the opposite, just like we did below. As below, so above. So you'll slide your top hand past the bottom hand, and you're keeping your elbows straight. So that is the constraint. Most people, when I teach this in person, they get to here and they're frustrated that they can't go any further, so they bend their elbow to roll further back. But the constraint is there for a reason. It's to help you notice things you wouldn't normally notice if you didn't have the constraint. Last time, slide your hand along the inside of your forearm, let that roll you backwards, and then reconnect your palms. So let's put this together. We're gonna explore rolling versus twisting. In rolling, your rib cage and your pelvis move together. So when you reach your left hand and your left knee at the same time, feel how your face and chest roll towards the floor, as does the front of your pelvis. Let's do that 2 more times. So just rolling. Top knee and top hand, reach, and then you return back to matching up your hands and your knees. Last time, rolling, reaching, and then return. Okay, now let's explore twisting. So this time, you're gonna take your top hand forward. That's gonna roll your head and chest towards the ground. And then pause there. This is where it gets a little tricky. You're gonna roll, or I guess not roll, but you're gonna send your left knee backwards. And you can also think of it sending the left side of your buttock backwards. And then come back to where you started, so hands and knees match, and we'll do the opposite. So you'll roll your head and chest towards the ceiling. That's gonna slide your left hand up towards the inside of your right forearm. But you're going to reach, and no need to go super far, your top knee past your bottom knee. So my head and chest are rotating towards the ceiling and my pelvis is rotated towards the floor. And then I come back to where I started. So let's do that a couple times. Head and chest roll towards the ceiling. Left hand slides backwards. Your pelvis rolls towards the floor. Top knee goes forwards. One more time. And again, you'll probably notice that it's a lot easier to go further with your head and chest. So maybe rein that in a little bit and let it match more directly the distance that you're rolling your knee forward or your pelvis forward. Okay. So we're going to do all of that on the other side, and then we'll recheck twisted triangle pose. So you can just roll over, or if you want to see me, you can switch as I'm doing so that you have your blankets on the other side. And we'll start with our hands and arms just straight out in line with your shoulders. So once you get settled on your side, you'll have your legs together, and you can again take a look and see. So start by reaching your top knee forward, and I always think of your femur bone is the pool cue, and there's the billiard ball, that's a hard thing to say, and you're just gonna, maybe get a good shot, and then you come back. 2 more times. Top knee is reaching past the bottom knee, and return, and this time just for fun, maybe take your hand to the outside of your right hip and feel how it's your whole leg that's moving forward. And then we do the opposite. So now your knee and your thigh and your pelvis move backwards. 2 more like that. And we all have different positions that both sides of our pelvis prefer, especially if you do a lot of driving like we do here in LA. So you might notice one side is different than the other, and that's normal, and one movement is different than the other. Okay, then let's take it to the upper body. So keeping your legs still, you're gonna reach your top hand past your bottom hand. That'll roll your face and chest towards the ground, and then reconnect your palms. 2 more times. Roll and reach, and return. And last one. Feel how this is twisting your face, your head, your chest towards the ground. Then the opposite. Lower body stays still, and you slide your hand along the inside of your forearm, and that's gonna roll your rib cage, your head, your chest towards the ceiling. 2 more times. So you just connect your palms, roll a little bit backwards, and return. And 1 more time. Okay, so we're going to put the upper body, lower body together. So this is rolling, meaning you're going to reach your top hand and your top knee forward. So that whole right body half moves together. We'll do that 2 more times. Top hand, top knee, reach past bottom hand and bottom knee. And return. And last one. Take a breath in, and then coming back. Now we'll explore how that's different from twisting. So roll and reach your top hand past your bottom hand, but send your right knee behind your left knee, so your right buttock moves backwards. And then return. We'll do that one 2 more times. So head and chest roll towards the floor, pelvis rolls towards the ceiling. And last time, notice what you notice, especially in the middle back area. That's usually really interesting. And then you match up your knees and your hands, and we do the reverse. So you'll roll your head and chest towards the ceiling, sliding your top hand backwards, but you're reaching your top knee forward, and then you return. Let's initiate with the knee. So reach your top knee forward, past your bottom knee, but roll your head and chest backwards. And then this last time we'll do it simultaneously. So as your top knee reaches forward, your top hand slides backwards. And then you reconnect. Let's come back up to stand and see how revolved triangle pose feels. If you have blocks, grab your blocks, and we'll start on the left side. So bringing your left foot forward, right foot back, and hip hinge, and then start to rotate your head and chest towards the left and place your right hand wherever you like, on the block, on your leg. I have my left hand in my lower back just to get a sense of where my head, spine, and pelvis are. And then you can leave your left hand there. You could use your hand on your chest to get a little extra twist. You could reach up towards the ceiling. And then slowly coming out. Hopefully it felt a little bit different. We'll do the same thing on the other side. So right foot forward, left foot back, come into a split stance, and then hinge and start your rotation. Reaching for the block and starting to spiral your head, your chest, and your pelvis. And then either reaching your right arm up to the ceiling or placing your right hand on your chest. This side feels very different. And then slowly coming back out. So our final mini sequence for rotation is going to be done lying down on the ground. For this next mini sequence, it's really nice to have a bare floor because our arms are going to be sliding on the floor, and that way you don't have the stickiness of the mat preventing your arms from sliding. So I'm going to get rid of all my props except for one block. So grab your block. You can always just hug yourself, but I think it's nice to have the block. It's an external cue for your breastbone. And have your knees bent with your feet wide. Start to roll your head and chest to the left, but keep your right buttock on the floor. And then go the other way. Roll your head and chest to the right, keeping your left buttock on the floor. We'll do it 2 more times. And I've just done this already today, and so it feels really good, but it didn't feel this good the first time I did this. And then coming back to center. You can go ahead and place the block off to the side, and we're going to come into an X shape. So you want your legs to be apart, arms are apart. If somebody were to look at you from above, you'd look like the letter X. And then take a moment to just feel the floor underneath your arms and legs. It's almost like you're a starfish. And connect to your center. Feel and sense where your belly button is. And if you were to move through the belly button, into that area of your back. Get a sense of that being the center of where you are in relationship to your arms and legs. So the first one I'm going to show you is option A, I guess we'll call it. You'll bend your right elbow and then slide your right hand across your chest, and your eyes are going to watch your right hand slide along the inside of your left hand. That's going to turn your head, but also your chest, your rib cage, your belly, your pelvis, and your whole right leg and foot. And then you hit rewind, reverse the movement. I'm imagining somebody's pulling my right foot, and that turns my right ankle, knee, thigh, pelvis, belly, chest, rib cage, and then my arm returns. You do that same thing on the other side. So you bend your left elbow, trace your left hand across your chest, below your collarbones. Follow your hand with your eyes, and then you start to roll your head, your chest, your belly, your pelvis, your leg, your foot, and just like before, you might be able to reach your top hand and fingers past the bottom hand, and then you reverse, sliding your left hand along the inside of your right forearm, reaching through your left foot and leg, and returning back to that X shape. You can continue with that version, or you can try this one. This one requires a little more range of motion in your shoulder. So you'll slide your right arm along the floor, and at a certain point, your head's in the way. So that's a cue when your arm hits your ear to start to roll your head, which then follows through into your chest, your belly, your pelvis. Your right leg internally rotates, and then you'll arrive with the inner edge of your right foot on the ground, the outer edge of your left foot on the ground, and you're lifting your head to kind of look up and see your right hand touching the floor past your left hand. Then initiate the movement from your left foot. It reaches to that corner of the room, and there's a spiral in your lower leg, your thigh, your pelvis, belly, rib cage, chest, shoulder, and arm. Same thing other side. So slide your left arm along the floor. Boom, that's a cue. Your head's in the way. You start to turn. And the spiraling and reaching happens all the way from your left fingertips through your left foot. So ground down with the outer edge of your right leg and foot, and then also ground with the inner edge of your left leg and foot. And then to come back the other way, start to lengthen your left toes towards that corner of the room that they're closest to, as you return back to your X position. We'll do one more on each side, but just pick up the pace a little bit. You're welcome to go just that slow, though, again. So arm slides, head turns, and there's a ripple effect that happens all the way down from your arm to your torso to your opposite leg. And then you return. Notice the spiral that happens through the right shoulder, elbow, hand as well. So your palms are facing up. The back of your left hand is touching the ground, and then when you run into your head, there's this flip, and now my left fingertips are touching the ground. And now it's still my left fingertips touching the ground, but as I turn, now it's the back of my left hand. Go ahead and bend your knees. Grab your block, and let's recheck the hug roll. If you've been doing the same arm on top, you can switch just for fun, right? And then feel your connection to the ground through your head, your spine, your pelvis, and your feet. Start to roll your head and chest to the left, and then come back through center, and roll your head and chest to the right. Let's do one or two more times. Try it with your eyes open and closed. So when your eyes are open, let your eyes lead the way. When you go to the right, you'll look out of the right corner of your right eye at the floor. And of course the same when you go to the left. And then when you do the last round with your eyes closed, can you sense the transfer of weight across your upper back from right shoulder blade to spine to left shoulder blade and then back to your spine. Go ahead and remove the block. And you're welcome to take a Shavasana here. So extending your legs long and checking in with your breath. You can connect your index fingers and thumb tips together. Noticing the pace of your heart and the pace of your breath. I recommend staying in Shavasana for at least 5 minutes, maybe longer if you have time. Thank you so much for practicing with me.